showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Today on episode 206 of I Am Salt Lake podcast, I sit down with local Salt Lake City stand-up comedian Eric Ripley. We find out his story. We talk about his interest in becoming a pilot. He chats about being a substitute school teacher.
Has he ever told jokes while teaching on an airplane?
Whose voice was that? That's Chrissy Shelley.
Who's in here?
Hey, for those longtime listeners of the podcast, I'm sure you've heard time and time again, just myself at the beginning of these podcasts. But earlier, Chrissy and myself were at some brunch at Zest, one of my local favorite spots here. And
Best brunch ever.
Hey, you heard it right from her, actually, not just from my voice. I know
that means it's right. That means it's true, guys.
Well, I was chatting and I was like, people are probably sick of just hearing me with this, intro. Hey, welcome to the podcast. And I said, let's do something a little different and have you come in and just chat with me for a second as I do a little intro for Eric Ripley, which Eric's been a longtime friend of yours, right?
Eric is a longtime friend of mine. Yes, actually.
How long have you known Eric?
That's a good question. Probably, to me, long time. A year and a half, maybe.
Okay.
Years.
So you know him a lot better than I've known him.
Yeah, we met at a comedy show. Yeah, the first time I saw him, I was like, it's Harry Potter. Because, come on, he looks like Daniel Radcliffe.
He does. He does. And you haven't listened to the interview yet with him. So,
I haven't.
So it was a good time getting to know him and finding out his story. I'm going to be playing that here in just a minute. I, of course, need to tell everybody, though, really quick, the sponsor of your podcast.
And speaking of that, your beard is looking pretty haggard.
It's looking pretty haggard?
Haggard.
Why haggard?
You need to go in the bathroom and get some skin oils out of your medicine cabinet.
Some beard oils from Oleo.
Beard oils.
Oleoskin.com, a great local company here in the Salt Lake Valley. They make beard oils, skin oils, beard
tattoo
balms,
oils.
Tattoo oils.
And they have a lot of things for women. They have a lot of good facial products for women also.
Yeah, check them out. They're actually going to be, so their website, oleoskin.com. I don't know if I mentioned that yet. Go check them out. They're going to be all doing at a bunch of events here in the area, farmers markets, the Wheeler farm markets and whatnot, so you can actually purchase their products locally. But they're going to be giving away some products at the I Am Salt Lake Live happening this upcoming Friday, January 22nd, 8 o'clock. Club 50 West Broadway. I got a really fun evening planned for you with Jay Whitaker, Kat Palmer, Richie T. Stedman. Come on out. Bring a date. Bring your husband, your wife, your best friend.
Can I bring my dog?
No dogs,
All
probably.
right, okay.
That
That's
probably
fair.
wouldn't be the best idea. However, there was a thought I should bring Charles.
I really think you should bring Charles. You gotta be like Dr. Evil. You can pet Charles, make an evil face when people come out.
For people listening that might not know, Charles is my cat. I know I've chatted about him on some previous episodes of the podcast. So anyway, Friday, January 22nd, I Am Salt Lake Live, Jay Whitaker, Kat Palmer, Richie T. Stedman. Go to iamsaltlake.com/live if you want to find out more about that show. It is sponsored by our friends at Slug Magazine. slugmag.com. Great folks. Go support them. Really honored to have them as a sponsor of the live show.
They put out a great magazine. It always is beautiful to look at on top of it. It's informative. It's really a nice thing to have. Like, you could collect Slug magazines. They're so beautiful.
I do collect them.
I think that's amazing.
So anyway, Eric Ripley's on this episode. We chat, we find out his story. It was recorded at the Utah Musicians Radio Studio here in Salt Lake City, so props to them. Go check them out. Many thanks to John Farmer for his support and for letting me use their office spaces to record a lot of these interviews.
And come to the live show. Be there, be square.
Yeah.
Only the cool people are going to be there.
Live show January 22nd. So with that being said, join me now as I chat with Eric Ripley and find out his story. First of all, I appreciate you even coming and doing this on last minute, doing this podcast. I mean, you get a message from some strange guy saying, will you come on this podcast and do it? It's very much appreciated. Very much appreciated.
No, I appreciate you having me. I think it's funny because people who know me know that I never have anything planned. And so I'm like the perfect last minute person because everyone knows that I'm just sitting at home watching TV, which is exactly what I would be doing tonight if I wasn't on here, as I'd be watching TV. So
what's your favorite TV show? I mean, let's start right there, actually.
Oh man, I watch a lot of Law and Order. It depends on the time of day. Like, I watch enough TV that depending on the day of the week and the time, I watch a lot of Law and Order SVU. I watch a show on Discovery Channel called Alaskan Bush People. I love Forensic Files. That show's awesome. I watch that before I go to bed. And yeah, I don't know. I love Rick and Morty. It's probably that. Everybody should watch Rick and Morty. It's probably one of the best shows on TV. I don't know if you watch that.
I want to say I have. What's like a guilty pleasure TV show that you're going to be so embarrassed to even mention that you watch it?
Oh man, over Christmas break, I watched a ton of Hallmark movies. Like a ton. And like at first I was like, I'd watch them because they were dumb, and I was like making fun of them and I'm like, this is so stupid. But after you watch them 3 days in a row, like I realized I'm watching these movies because it's like it's the same movie every time and it's like nothing but like happy feel good endings. So it's like what you're going to get every time you going into it. It's the same dumb story, but I watched them probably 3 or 4 days in a row over the Christmas holiday. And I had never seen one before.
But you enjoyed it? There's nothing wrong with just admitting that you enjoy a good Hallmark movie.
Yeah, I mean, some of them were ridiculous and the plots were... me and actually my little sister and I came up with our own called The Princess and the Chocolate Maker.
Sure.
We're in the process of writing it now. It's going to be amazing. But yeah, that's probably my only TV guilty pleasure.
So wait, you're in the process of writing a movie or something? What?
Well, we came up with the plot. It's going to be, because it seems like there's one reoccurring theme in Hallmark Christmas movies, and that's for some reason every single girl is like a princess, and she's like lost in New York or something like that. And so we were going to write one about a girl who's lost in New York. She's a princess. She meets a chocolate maker. But all Hallmark movies are the same. Everybody's white. And so we're going to have the chocolate maker's going to be a black guy to like throw everybody off. And then we're going to have like, the two old Muppets that always like laugh and make fun of everything.
Sure, yeah.
We're going to have like that character, but they're going to be a lesbian couple. And we're just going to like take everything Hallmark is known for and just throw it out the window and come up with this incredible movie.
Is this something hypothetical, or do you really write movies? Again, you have to remember, I didn't do all my homework on you. So
this is something that we thought would be awesome. We haven't written any of it yet. We basically came up with it. But yeah,
you're just having fun with it.
Yeah. And originally, actually, that's what I wanted to be a director. That's what I wanted to do. I thought that would be the coolest job.
Is that what you went to school for?
I went to school for broadcasting. So I did like a lot of radio and TV stuff in college.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I could pick your brain now.
Yeah, pick away.
Do you have tips for radio? I mean, have you done anything with radio or TV?
I haven't done anything outside of what I did in college. I did a lot of stuff in college. Most of the stuff I did was sports related. I did play-by-play on the radio for 3 years for women's college basketball. And a lot of the games, I didn't have a color commentator, so I did the whole game myself, which is a lot of talking. Like by the end of the game, my voice just stopped working. It was just done because it was like 3.5 hours just nonstop talking.
So you went to school for broadcasting radio, but you're a pilot.
I am, yeah.
So did you go to school for that later on then?
I did, yeah. Actually,
you went to school a lot.
I have, and I have like really nothing to show for it.
Except a lot of debt, I'm sure.
Yeah. I have like a lot of things that look great on a resume, but that resume helps me get nowhere in life. So what happened was I went to college. I graduated with a degree in broadcasting.
Where did you go to college for broadcasting?
I went down to SUU in Cedar City.
Okay.
So I was down there and graduated, and I was working in California. And I had always had a goal. I wanted to be a pilot, whether it was for a living or just for fun. It didn't really matter. I just wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to fly. And so I was working in California, and I was getting my private pilot's license just so I could fly for fun. And I wanted to come back up here to Utah. This was where all my friends were. I wanted to come back. I like Utah. Sometimes the people annoy me, but I think that's kind of a lot of people feel that way, I think.
Absolutely.
But the state itself is amazing. I love it here. And so I got offered an interview up here in Utah. I came up to Utah. I did the interview and ended up not working out. And so I literally packed up everything I owned in California. I drove up here in one day. I did the interview. It didn't work out. I was like, well, I have a place to stay. I'm just going to stay up here and find something. So I had another interview. That didn't work out. And that's actually how I got into doing stand-up comedy, is after those 2 failed interviews, which both of them were kind of ridiculous situations, but whatever. I was like, nobody's going to tell me I can't do comedy. Like, it's open mic. Everyone gets to do it. And if you've ever gone to open mic, you realize everybody gets to do it. And so I started doing comedy, and I like doing TV stuff. I don't really like news and things like that. And that was really my only option as far as TV goes, like here in Utah and stuff like that. What I could find was news-related stuff. And I was like, I'd much rather fly airplanes than sit in a news studio all day and like write depressing stories, about things going on in the world. So I ended up going back to school to get all of my pilot ratings. And I have 3 more I have to get, and then I'll be done with all those ratings. And so I'm just studying to take those tests now, and I do my stand-up. And then I substitute teach during the week. That's what I do, is kindergarten through 12th grade.
Okay. Does that keep you pretty busy, substitute teaching?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, between people going on vacation or taking sick days or whatever it is, yeah, you can pretty much do it every day of the week.
Just the different schools around.
Yeah. I do
area.
just one school district. And so between kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, I don't even know how many schools are in the...
What's your favorite age to teach?
Probably 3rd grade, actually.
Really?
Yeah. The high school kids are annoying. They don't care. They're like disrespectful. Yeah, the junior high kids are all right, but the elementary school kids are actually really fun. So yeah, I like 3rd grade probably the best.
So let's go back a little bit. Your pilot. So you don't actually fly any airplanes yet, like professionally, or do because you're finishing school for that, or I kind of missed you somewhere in there.
Yeah. The aviation. A lot of people think that you become a pilot, and then it's like you graduate and you become an airline pilot, and then you just start working for the airlines. And a lot of people don't realize that there's actually like several steps between that. And so I actually have 2 commercial pilot's license now. I have instrument ratings, high performance, complex, multi-engine. I have all these different ratings. But the FAA came out a few years ago, and they said, you can't be an airline pilot until you have 1,500 total hours flying airplanes. And so when you graduate from school, you have about 300 hours, maybe 350 at the most.
Okay.
And so the only real way to get to that point where you can actually have a cool job getting paid money to fly airplanes is you can either be in the military, which I'm too old and I wear glasses, so they don't want me, or you can be a flight instructor. And you teach people how to fly airplanes until you get your 1,500 hours, and then you can go fly for the airlines. And
like
so,
Delta or Southwest or something like that.
Yep.
Right?
And normally when you start with like their regional companies. So like SkyWest is Delta's regional company. They fly to like Mesa and St. George and Denver, Colorado, and just like little flights all day. And that's where you start at. And so,
is that where you would like to go, though? Is that what you would like to do with it?
No, actually, I never wanted to be an airline pilot. My grandpa did that. He was in the Air Force, and he flew for the airlines. Between the airlines and the Air Force, he flew for 41 years professionally. And I never, ever had a desire to be a bus driver. Like, it just seemed boring to me, to sit in the cockpit and let the autopilot fly, and you take off and you land and you do that 2 or 3 times a day, and that's it. The whole reason I wanted to become a pilot is because when I was a kid, I went to an air show and I saw this pilot do all these crazy aerobatics. And I was like, oh man, I didn't know you could do that kind of stuff. So my ultimate goal actually is to fly in air shows, to go around the country.
Like the Blue Angels or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Blue Angels. Right?
Yep. And so, yeah, that's what I would love to do.
So you're a little bit on the adventurous side. You're a little bit of a daredevil, a little bit of a stunt man.
I don't know.
Like, would you do stunts in movies?
Maybe. Yeah, I think I would. I think that would be fun.
Okay. Well, so if anybody's listening and they need a stunt airplane driver.
Yeah, I think that would be fun.
A pilot, I guess, is the correct term, not a driver, right? You don't drive an airplane.
True. Although military pilots, actually, the fighter pilots are called drivers.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll take driver. I'll take that. I'm not cool enough to be a fighter pilot, so I'll take it on the podcast.
Well, let's get into, comedy. I mean, that's kind of you're a local Salt Lake City comedian here in the area. Are you in Salt Lake or are you Utah? You're Utah County, aren't you?
No, I actually live down at the point of the mountain in Draper.
Okay.
Yeah,
So for some reason I thought you were Utah County or something.
No,
maybe.
I couldn't.
Which I was like, well, thank you so much for coming into.
I could not. I don't think I could last Utah County.
So you mentioned, like in the beginning of the conversation, some different circumstances led you to doing stand-up comedy. Talk about the first time. Was it just your typical Wise Guys open mic that you did the first time you ever got up and did stand-up comedy, or where did you do?
Yeah, the first time I ever did it was at Wise Guys open mic. I just got on Google and I knew there was comedy clubs here, so I Googled when the open mics were, and they're on Wednesday nights. At the time, they're at West Valley.
So you didn't know any of the comics. You didn't know any of the local comedians here in Salt Lake. You had to Google it. You didn't like.
Yeah.
They weren't like bugging you, the local.
No. It was. I didn't know anybody. My none of my friends did comedy. None of my friends that lived in Utah never even been to Wise Guys. So I just Googled it. I looked it up, and I think like a lot of people, like when you're nervous about something and you're unsure, you make excuses, and. I've probably done that throughout my life a bunch of times where I would come up with a reason why I couldn't go to open mic this Wednesday, like, oh, maybe I'll do it next week, and I didn't want to do that this time. I didn't want to make an excuse like, oh, I need to go get a new notebook. I can't write good jokes with these old notebooks, so I didn't want to make an excuse why I couldn't go. So I just said, I looked it up. I saw they were on Wednesdays and I'm like, this Wednesday I'm going to go. So I came up with my jokes and I went. And I remember there's still a lot of comics that go up every Wednesday, but I was like really antsy and nervous, and like I kept asking like, can I go now? Can I go now? Because I just wanted to get it over with, so I wasn't nervous anymore. And it went up, and it went really well. And
so you were writing jokes prior to this? You were already writing jokes in a notebook. It wasn't like you just got up there and was like, okay, I know some stuff in my head, or like how were you writing a lot of jokes prior to doing open mic?
No, well, I decided I was going to go, and I knew that I had 3 minutes because the website told you if you bring guests, you get 3 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I need to come up with 3 minutes worth of material. And so that's what I did. And when I started doing stand-up, I used to write like word for word. Like even if I was going to make like a sound effect in part of the joke, I would type that out, and like try to spell it phonetically so I knew what sound effect I wanted to make. And it was very robotic. And so I had my 3 minutes, and that's all I had was just 3 minutes worth of jokes, just enough to do that 3 minutes on stage. And they went all right. And so I went back the next week, and from then on, I just kept going.
But something what was inside of you that prompted you to say, I'm going to do stand-up comedy. I'm going to go to an open mic. I mean, was there something, or is it just a random idea?
No, I mean, growing up, I was always like funny. And people always told me I should be a comedian.
Okay, so you had that kind of growing up and people were feeding it to you. Yeah.
Yeah, and basically it was just like, you should be a comedian. You're a funny guy. You should give it a shot. And I was just always kind of like, whatever. And so finally, after those 2 jobs kind of fell through, and I was still looking for a job, still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I thought,
why not do comedy?
Why not give it a shot? Because it's open mic, so they're not going to tell me no. And it'll give me something to do during the day while I'm looking for work and stuff like that. I can just sit and write. And so that's what I did.
What was the response like? I mean, honestly, did you get some laughs? Did you get anybody giving you any feedback after your first time going up?
Yeah, I got laughs. The jokes worked. They weren't like, I didn't bomb the first time, which is good, because if I had bombed it, I don't know if I would have been able to go back again. But actually, I didn't start talking to comics at the club probably for like a few months. I would go and I would sit by myself, kind of like in the audience, like in the back corner, because I'm a back corner kind of person. I like to watch
That's your
everything.
space.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want anyone sitting behind me. And so, yeah, I was watching, because whenever I do something, I like to research like the crap out of it. So I understand it and I feel more confident going into it. And so I would watch these videos online, about stand-up comedy and about the business of it and how it all works. So I understood it. And I think his name is Ari Schaefer. I think that's how you say it. He did a video, and in the video he talked about, one of the most important things in comedy is networking with other comics, is getting other comedians to like you and be friends with you. And, that's how you're going to get a lot of your jobs. And I didn't know at the time, like, how true that was. And so I thought, at this point I had been going pretty much every week, and I'm like, I like this. This is fun. So I should probably start making friends with some of the comics. So what I did was, a lot of the comics that have been doing it for years sit in the very, very back of the room. And it's almost like the further away from the stage you get, the more cynical people become. And so the comics that have been doing it for years are like in the way back. And I didn't talk a lot. I just kind of sat back there, and when they would like crack jokes, I would kind of laugh. And then I would like, start asking questions and conversation and just kind of like let people know like, oh, hey, I'm Eric. And that's ultimately like how I ended up getting pretty much every show I've ever been on, is just from that networking that I learned was so important, is because they were like, they themselves would either ask me to be on shows, or they would tell people like who are looking for comics, like, hey, ask Eric. He's funny. Like, he's a good guy. I know him.
And that's so important in all aspects of life, really, is networking.
Yeah.
Introducing yourself to people and making friends, connecting. How long can you do it? How long is a set? I mean, can you do 30 minutes an hour? I mean, have you done a headlining tour, like not tour, but the headlining show, or?
I started featuring earlier this year.
Yeah.
And that's about 30 minutes. And I got booked to headline in Wyoming.
Okay.
And I told the guy who booked me, he's like, you can do 45 minutes, right? And I'm like, no. And he's like, oh, you'll be fine. So I went up to Wyoming, and I knew that I had about 35 minutes because that was the longest I had been on stage. So I knew, like, in my head, I'm like, just do your act and find a way to add 10 minutes to it. And so
you're sweating bullets the whole time driving. You're like, I can't do this.
Yeah. And I was just kept telling myself, I'm like, it's only 10 minutes. You only got to add 10 minutes. And so I was like coming up with like things I could talk about. And I did it though. My goal was just to be up there for 45 minutes, because that's what I was supposed to do. And I got off the stage when I was done, and I looked at my phone because I had recorded the set, and it was at 45 and a half minutes. And I was like, all right, I did it. But I'm not a headline.
But you're not comfortable doing 45 minutes yet.
No.
Well, okay, let's back up just a little bit then. How long ago was it that you did your first open mic approximately? Like a couple years ago, a year ago, 3 years ago?
It was a year and a half ago.
About a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, you've come a long way in a short time, really.
Yeah. I lucked out because I know you said he's been on the show before, Guy Seidel.
Guy, yeah.
I had been doing comedy for about 5 months, and he puts on a charity show every year at Christmas time. The Comedy Cares fundraiser, they put it on at Wise Guys. And so last Christmas, he asked me, he's like, hey man, do you want to be on the show? And I was like, yeah, heck yeah. So I showed up, and it was like packed. Like there was not one empty. There was like 300 people in Wise Guys. And I had only been doing comedy for 5 months, and I was nervous, because I had never been on a real show before. And now the first time I'm on a real show, there's like 300 people there. So I went up, and it went well. And shortly after that, I think I'd been doing it for like 6 months. Marcus, who's also been on the show, he asked me if I wanted to host the show that he and Guy put on, the music show. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I showed up. I remember it was up in Ogden, and I showed up, and he kind of explained, he's like, go up and just kind of warm everybody up, do your jokes, and then bring up Guy. And I'm like, okay. So I went up and I did it, and it went well. And he's like, all right, come back tomorrow and do the same thing. So came back the next day, and I did the same thing, and it went well. And so I got like a permanent job now hosting the show. Every time they do that show here in Salt Lake and stuff, I host it. And I've probably hosted it like 60 or 70 times, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
So people listening might know you from their shows.
Yeah. If you have seen that show in the last year or so, I would have been up there hosting it. And so I lucked out because I've been able to do a lot of shows in front of a lot of people. And so I wouldn't say that I'm completely comfortable yet on stage. You still get nervous and things like that. But being able to do all that stuff helped me not have a panic attack for the 45 I had to try to do.
I don't know if anybody ever, that nervousness ever goes away. You know, even the people that are used to getting up there all the time, you know, the big famous people, I guess you would say. But I mean, is there any tips that you have that you might recommend? Like, say somebody was wanting to get up and do some stand-up comedy. Any recommendations to kind of help ease the nerves a little bit? Because that's the worst part, in my opinion. That could really make your set bomb. You might have awesome jokes on paper, but if you don't present yourself well and carry yourself well, and you're just so nervous, I mean, anything that comes off the top of your head there? Or?
I don't. And the funny thing is the audience can sense it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, even if you're like, you know, that saying of, you know, above the surface the duck looks calm, but underneath, you know, his feet are going a million miles an hour. The audience will pick up on that vibe, even if you're trying to hide it. And so, I mean, honestly, you have to accept that you're going to bomb.
Yeah, you just have to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And just, it is what it is, I guess.
And once you accept that it's going to happen, because everybody bombs. Nobody's ever done comedy that has never, ever bombed. Like, it doesn't happen. And if it does, then you're either not taking chances, you're not getting better, or you're just lying to yourself, you know? And so one of the things that's helped me is I did a show in Colorado one time, and I bombed the whole time, 25 minutes on stage. I bombed for 25 minutes.
The whole time you were up there, it was just like...
Yeah, nobody was paying attention to us. Nobody cared we were there doing comedy.
Why? I mean, were you saying the same jokes there as you have here, and people here have laughed?
Yeah. I wasn't really trying new stuff. I was trying stuff that I'd done in shows that had worked for months, and it was basically a scheduling conflict of... Everybody who came to the show was told that it started at 8 o'clock, and we were told it started at 9 o'clock. And so when we showed up, everyone had been waiting there for about an hour and a half. And so we got on stage, and by then everyone was like, well, we're done with you. We don't care.
Yeah.
And so the loudest laugh that actually happened during my set was when somebody in the audience heckled me, and everybody laughed. That was the loudest laugh of my set, was somebody heckling me. I mean, when you bomb for 25 minutes, like, anything else doesn't seem that bad.
Well, you were kind of destined to fail with that one. That's not your fault, really. Because, I mean, I've been in situations like that where I've gone to see even a band play, and then they're late, and by then you're just like, I'm out of here. I'm not even mentally there. I'm not even mentally capable of watching this right now. So that really wasn't your fault. I mean, I was going to ask that, actually, if there was any embarrassing moments on stage, but I mean, that would be pretty embarrassing to just be like, gosh, are you guys ready to throw a tomato at me?
Yeah, it was. And it's engraved in my mind, like the faces of the people, because they wouldn't pay attention. Even if you got them to chuckle, they would just all go back to their cell phones. And it was like in a bar, and they didn't turn the TVs off. So all of the TVs all over the bar had like different things on them, and people were like watching them and texting and stuff like that. And so just to like get their attention, to get them to focus on the setups, and then the punchlines came and they weren't paying attention. So they just like stare at you. Yeah, it was
where would you like to go with comedy? I mean, where do you see it? I mean, you got all these other things going, your pilot thing going, and you know, you've gone to school for broadcasting and radio. Would you like to just become a full-time stand-up comic, or are you just having fun right now?
No, I when I started, that's what it was. When I started, it was something for me to do that would keep me busy, that wouldn't like make me uber depressed sitting around, like not having things work out. So when I started, it was just like, hey, it'll give me something to do on a Wednesday night, and I can focus on my writing. But I don't remember exactly when, but now it's at the point where it's like this, it's what I want to do for a living one day.
Sure.
Yeah. And I actually set a goal, at the end of this year, at the end of 2016, to be able to to be a headlining comedian and to have a tight, solid 45 minutes of comedy, so I can go out and get the jobs at corporate gigs, or go out and get the headlining jobs in different places and things like that. And so that's my goal for this year, is by the end of it, to have that tight, solid 45 minutes that I can be proud of, I guess, and go out and start on that path of becoming a comic.
Let's, I want to pick your brain with some other stuff really quickly. Well, what are other hobbies and interests? I mean, you mentioned TV and pilot. I mean, do you got any other hobbies and interests that keep you busy?
I think just basic stuff. I like hiking, camping, fishing.
Stuff.
Yeah.
If you could learn one random skill, what would be a random skill that you would like to learn?
Does scuba diving count? Does that count as a random skill?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, so you've never been scuba diving?
No, I've never been scuba diving before. So yeah, I have a bucket list goal to swim with great white sharks one day, and so I need to get scuba certified so I can do that. So I'd love to learn how to scuba dive.
If you knew the world was ending, 2016, we're a brand new year right now. If you knew the world was ending this year, what would you do differently?
Man, I don't know. I don't know, because every day I wake up, I'm really hard on myself, and I think sometimes that actually holds me back more than it helps me. And so every day I wake up and I'm like, God, Eric, you're a loser. Get better at stuff.
You really tell yourself that?
Yeah, all the time. You're a loser, Eric. Get better. And so I push myself. And so honestly,
you got to cut that out, man.
I know, but that's what I do. Every day I'm like, all right, what did I suck at yesterday that I can do better today? So I don't know if there's aspects of I guess this kind of sounds like a humble brag, even though it started with me calling myself a loser. Where it's there's nothing in my life that I just push off to the side and put it on the back burner. I'm whatever, I'll fix it or do it another day. Cause I'm really hard on myself. So I would probably just keep doing what I'm doing.
Nothing different. Nothing. You wouldn't quit your job and travel or, No, you answered the question.
Yeah,
I guess.
I actually like working.
So what did you do growing up that got you in trouble when you were a kid? I mean, was there anything you did that got you in trouble? Or were you a pretty good kid?
No, I was a great kid, actually. My brother would have been the one that would have a lot of things to answer for that. But I was a really good, quiet kid.
Where, actually, I usually ask this even at the beginning. Where's home? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up here in Utah?
No, actually. I've lived all over the country. I was born in Arizona, and we moved to New York. I've lived in New Mexico, California, and Utah.
Whereabouts in California?
I lived by Temecula.
Okay.
I basically lived smack dab between San Diego and Riverside.
Okay. I grew up in Ventura.
Okay.
Yeah, I mentioned it a few times on the podcast. But I mean, shoot, I moved to Utah, gosh, long time ago, 22 years ago, roughly. I don't know. Do the math. Remind me again what you were doing down in California. That was where you were going to school, or
no, actually,
no. That was back to the jobs.
Yeah. Well, what happened was, I'm LDS. I went on a mission.
Okay.
And while I was on my mission, my family moved to California. So I went home
thanks, Mom.
Yeah, I went home to a place that I had never been to before. I got home, I didn't even know where my room was. And
is that kind of weird? I mean, I know how it is for me when I go home. It's this was my room. You're supposed to leave the posters up.
Yeah. It was really weird because I still remember I walked in and I looked around the house that I had never seen before, and I was like, well, where's my room? And I got there and I quickly realized that it was just a guest room, that they were basically saying you can stay here till you leave. And so yeah, it was weird, but
where did you go on a mission to, if you don't mind sharing that?
I actually went to Utah. I got sent to Utah from Arizona. So
where in Utah? Provo?
No, it was in the Salt Lake City South mission.
Was that a tough mission?
I'm
glad we brought this up. I want to pick your brain because I would love to actually bring some missionaries on the podcast. I mean, be sincerely respectful. No disrespect, but especially as a Utah missionary, is that a little humiliating? I mean, I'm going to ask you this. I'm not going to ask them this. I mean, but was it? I mean, because you're everybody's Mormon there.
Yeah. And I still remember I got my call and I opened it and I read it and I saw Utah and I thought I'm going to the MTC in Utah. Okay, whatever. Where am I going? And I read it again and I was like, Salt Lake City South, and I was pissed. Like, I was angry probably for about 2 or 3 weeks. Like, angry because I didn't want to go there. I wanted to go someplace cool like Africa, because some people might not know we don't get to pick.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so I was angry. I was upset, and then I got here, and like, I was amazed at how many people live in Utah and hate the church, because I'm like, that's like moving to Hawaii and like not liking Polynesian culture. It's like, what did you think you were getting into? And
thank you for bringing that up, because I think people are so quick to be angry with Utah, but it's like, what do you expect?
Yeah.
What do you expect?
Yeah. We would have still been in Missouri if people didn't want to kill us. So we moved out here, but yeah, so I got sent to Utah, and I was upset at first. I mean, after it was all done and everything, I enjoyed it. I had fun.
So this was your first time in Utah then, when you came here for your mission? Or no?
I had been here one other time. I came to a basketball camp when I was a kid in Utah, and it was like 4 days, and that was it. I had never been in Utah other than that. Never. And it was funny because growing up, my dad always made fun of Utah, and we always viewed Utah as like the weird place to be. But here I'm back again. I came back.
So is that why you came back? Because you kind of fell in love with it a little bit from your mission?
Yeah. And also because my family moved, I didn't have any friends in California. So all the people I knew were other guys that were in the mission, and they are all coming back to Utah to go to college. So I had no friends when I got home because my family moved there while I was gone. And so I got home, didn't know anyone, didn't have anything to do. So I was like, well, I'm going to go back to Utah and go to school. So that's why I came back up here.
And you like it? I mean, you
Yeah, I do. I love Utah. Like, people think that there's like, dangerous or ghetto places in Utah. Like, no, go to Southern California and you will realize that Utah is like a great place. It's safe. Like, there's no place in Utah that I would feel dangerous or scared like walking around at night. I would walk anywhere. It's like, you can watch the Jazz, you can go hiking, camping. It's like, I love it.
How would you survive a zombie apocalypse? It's a complete random switching of subjects here. I'm curious. Man. I'm curious how Eric would do it. I mean, being a pilot and all, maybe.
When I was in college, we had a whole plan that we were going to take school buses and crash them into the front of Walmart so nobody could get in, and we would just live in Walmart. But then I realized from watching all the zombie shows that everyone's plan is probably to go to Walmart. And so I would either...
See, and that wouldn't be my first plan.
Really? What's your first plan?
I would, honestly, I would probably go into the woods and build some sort of community out in the woods.
See, and that I shifted from Walmart to that plan.
Maybe like a tree house?
Yeah, but somebody brought up a good point one time. They're like, well, Eric, how much time do you spend in the woods now? And I'm like, well, not a lot. And they're like, so all of a sudden you're just going to know how to do everything in the woods, like build a house and like start fire without matches? And I'm like, well, no.
Well, how much time do you spend in Walmart?
A lot, probably more than I should, and definitely more than I want to.
Yeah. So you're a little more familiar with Walmart. Yeah, so you know where stuff is.
Yeah. I'd probably either be on a boat now, or I'd go to an island, like a small island, like the kind of islands that are like up in Alaska or something like that.
Let's say you could go back to your first day of high school and give yourself advice.
Oh, man.
What would you say?
Start lifting weights now and don't stop. Because then you wouldn't be 29 years old and really skinny. That's probably the one advice that I would give him.
But you got to eat it up while you can, man. 29, I mean, you're going to get, once you hit 30, your metabolism stops and you put on about 50 pounds. And
I'm hoping. I want to put on weight. I'm like the only person in the world, I think, that wants to gain weight.
I felt the same way when I was younger because I was just like a skinny twig, and then you start just get the belly and you just, you're just like, no. You don't want to do it. But you mentioned watching TV a lot in the beginning of the podcast. What's your top 3 all-time favorite movies?
Ooh, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and probably Back to the Future, the first one.
Those are good choices.
Yeah.
Let's say, obviously, this is a Salt Lake City podcast, and I ask this everybody that comes on the podcast. If somebody was visiting Salt Lake for a day, you're pretty new here. I mean, you haven't lived here your whole life. What would you tell them to go check out, visit, experience? Is there any like area or building or I don't know, something, an area of Salt Lake or something in Salt Lake? Like I get the temple or a hike or
what? I'd probably tell them to do a hike because any friend who's ever been up to Utah for something that I've run into, the first thing they say every time is like, I've never seen mountains like this. So a hike would probably be one of them.
But you're not a big hiker.
No, I do. I enjoy hiking. Yeah.
Okay.
Hiking and camping and fishing and stuff.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
right.
just not very good at them.
Is there a hike that you know of?
You know what? I do the Bell Canyon in Sandy all the time. I did it probably at least once a week over the summer. I'd go up there and go fishing. And I love that one because it's easy and it's amazing views. So yeah, definitely that hike. I'd probably tell them to, I don't know if you've ever eaten at the Rooftop downtown, the restaurant that like overlooks the temple.
I'm pretty sure I have at one time. That's I was going to ask that as well. Favorite local eating spots. So, I mean, if you have any favorite local eating spots too that you would recommend.
This is going to be bad. I'm not really like a snobby food person, and I'm single. And I can't cook.
So you're just like a McDonald's guy,
yes.
McDonald's,
Yeah.
Burger King.
Yep, fast food all the time.
Well, you look great for eating fast food all the time.
That's everyone's shocked because, like I said, I cannot gain weight. Like I eat fast food at least twice a day. I don't gain a pound.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm 29. I got 4 months till I'm 30. I can't gain a pound.
Is there anything that you would change about Utah if you could?
Yes, I'll preface this with the statement that I am a Mormon, but I would change how people are here in Utah because if you've lived outside of Utah, you've probably met Mormon people before, and they're usually a lot different. And so being a Mormon person, it hurts us because it's like, oh, I've met Mormons before, and when I lived in Utah, it's like, well, meet me, and maybe some people in California, and people in upstate New York. I used to live up there. So yeah, and having served my mission here, I can see the effect that some people have on people that aren't members of our church. So that's one thing I would change is the Mormons in the state to make them normal people.
Thank you.
Yes, that's one thing I would change. The second thing I would change is I would make it mandatory for everyone in the state to retake their driver's test. Because people in this state are the worst drivers I've ever seen in my entire life. They're selfish. They cut you off. They do whatever they want, no matter what the road signs say. And so driving test would be one too.
I love it. Well, I wonder what it is, especially since so many people come here from California.
Yeah.
Why they're such crappy drivers.
Yeah, I don't know, because in California, I mean, you got rush hour, but everyone there knows how to handle rush hour. Like, I've never lived in a state where the fast lane is at a complete stop and everybody else is just driving normal. It's like, I don't even know what needs to take place outside of an accident for that to happen, but then eventually it starts to go again and there's no accident. So I have no idea what they're doing and whose idea it was to put roundabouts in the state, but every day I never had road rage until I moved here and started driving, and I was just like, what are you people doing?
I actually should have asked you this back when we were talking about comedy, but it came to my head again. Mm-hmm. How is it being a Mormon and being involved in the comedy scene? Do you feel that people are quicker to judge you? People might not think you're going to be as funny, or has that affected you at all?
You know what? I don't really have jokes about being Mormon.
Okay.
I don't know. I wouldn't. Some people are shocked when they find out I'm Mormon, just because of my personality. Like, I'm blunt and I say things that maybe are not that Mormon-y. Like, I'm not a horrible person. I'm not up there, dropping C-bombs on stage.
But you're also not the Mormon that runs around with the "I'm a Mormon" T-shirt and every other word you make it known that you're Mormon.
Yeah.
I mean,
and my religious beliefs don't really ever come into my comedy. I mean, I don't cuss on stage. I'm like a PG-13, PG-18 act, but I don't cuss on stage because I don't really cuss in real life. But I think your job as a comedian is to be you on stage. And a lot of people are characters of themselves, and I try to be like me, my beliefs and everything like that. You know, I have a joke about religion. It makes fun of all religions. But I don't really have material of like, you know.
Sure.
Yeah. I got 62 wives and anything like that.
Well, let's run down the list. I mean, how can people connect with you? You're probably on Facebook.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. It's just Eric Ripley, like Believe It or Not, which I hear about 38 times a day.
Any relation there?
No. I don't know. And if there is, we're not seeing any money from it. So if we found out like when I was old, I'd be upset. I'm like, man, that's all that money I missed out on. Yeah, I'm on Twitter at the Eric Ripley, Instagram. I'm not very good at Twitter. I have one. I'm not very good at it though.
But what does it take to be good at Twitter? I mean, just writing 140 characters in a little box, I guess, or
yeah. And I forget I have an account sometimes until like a show comes up, and then I'm like, oh, I should promote this, and then I know like if I I tweet at wherever I'm doing the show, they'll retweet it. But yeah, I'm not great at it.
Well, sounds like you're pretty good. You know, to use add somebody else's username on there, and they'll retweet it.
Yeah, that's true. I know the basics. I know the basics.
Anything else you want to plug or mention before we close out? I've had a great time chatting with you. I mean,
no, this has been really fun. I appreciate you asking me to do this. I always feel bad when people ask me to do things because they're always like, "Oh, you're a pilot and you're a comic," but currently I don't do either for a living. But that comes back to me being hard on myself. But
with this podcast, it isn't so much of like what you do for a living. It's what you bring to the table in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
You add something to Salt Lake City by doing comedy. And I know I'm grateful for that because without people like you, the city would be pretty lame.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm hoping by the end of this year, I'll have my Type 45 and I'll start making a better name for myself and for Utah too, in the comedy world.
What about actually one more question here, and then I'll let you go. Because you're actually going to go ghost. What are you going to go ghost hunting?
Ghost hunting, yeah. I think,
with Marcus.
Yeah, I'm going ghost hunting.
Which I've had Marcus on this show.
Yeah.
Any idea where you're going, or you probably don't want to mention?
Yeah, I have no idea where we're going. Actually, I'm just going to show up to his house and we're going to go. And I've never been on one before. I watch. Are
you
Ghost
scared?
Adventures. No, I'm not scared. I might be when we get there and like something weird happens. I might get a little freaked out.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Yeah, I do. I believe that there's spirits and things like that around.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't believe in that exorcism stuff. I watch those movies and I'm like, yeah, I don't buy that. But
I should hit Marcus up and say, take me ghost hunting sometime.
You should. He'd take you.
We'll do a whole podcast about it.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Anything else you want to mention before I hit the stop button on the record here, or anything else you want to chit chat about? I think we've touched a little bit on all of it. I think a little bit. But,
I just thank you again for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Eric. All right. Many thanks goes out to Eric for joining me on this episode of the podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed getting to know him and finding out his story, chatting comedy, and chatting about some of the other projects that he's up to. All the links to get in touch with him, I'm going to put them on the website of I Am Salt Lake, iamsaltlake.com/206. It's for episode 206. Go check out the website. You can listen to all the back episodes right there online. Connect on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, where you can subscribe. Absolutely free. New podcast every week right there in your feed. Again, the live show, January 22nd. So it's this upcoming Friday. So depending on when you're listening to this episode, it might have already passed. But don't worry, I'm going to be doing more live shows as well. But January 22nd, Jay Whitaker, Kat Palmer, Richie T. Stedman. The show is sponsored by Slug Magazine, slugmag.com. Go give them some love. Really honored to have them as a sponsor of I Am Salt Lake Live.
Go see Eric Ripley at Wise Guys, guys.
Yeah, Eric Ripley. He's
support two great places.
Yeah, and like Eric mentions in the podcast, he opens for Guy and Marcus a lot of times. So
he does, and that is a good show.
Yeah,
it's a really good show. Eric is an excellent comic. Marcus and Guy put on a fantastic show. You would not regret it.
Yeah, and many thanks to Chrissy for joining me on the intros and outros of this episode. Something a little different. I'm sure you guys...
I'm just here to steal your beard oils.
Steal Oleo Skin and Beard. Go check them out. oleoskin.com. Support them. They are awesome for sponsoring all the I Am Salt Lake podcast episodes. and they're going to be doing some giveaways at the live show, and it's going to be exciting. So that's it this week. Get out and enjoy the week. Love the city you live in. Support local. Have an awesome week, and we'll see you again next Sunday.